Mr. Lucas is now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The United States has some of the best capital markets in the world and are critical to the strength of our economy. During the challenging last several years, our capital markets were essential in facilitating capital and managing risks for U.S. businesses, investors, and even the government. While we don't yet have the details of Basel III proposal coming from the Fed, Vice Chair Barr has indicated it will impact the capital market activities of large U.S. institutions. I'm concerned about adding punitive capital charges to U.S. banks is counterproductive to promoting liquidity and efficient markets. This will come at the same time the SEC is engaged in dramatic and transformational market structure changes at an unprecedented rate. Since Treasury's mission is to maintain a strong economy and promote economic growth and stability, are you confident that these policy changes will not undermine the resilience of the U.S. capital markets that support the economy, Madam Secretary?
I certainly agree with the goal that you mentioned of maintaining strong capital markets. I'm not really in a position to comment on these regulations. I don't believe they've been released yet, and I haven't been fully briefed, but we will certainly review carefully, think about the implications that forthcoming changes could have for the functioning of our capital markets, and particularly for the Treasury market where we have a particular responsibility.
Just to reiterate, it is concerning that U.S. banks will have to implement both significant market structure changes, including and affecting the U.S. Treasury markets, and increased capital requirements associated with market activities. I'll ask this. Are the Fed and the SEC coordinating with Treasury on the economic analysis necessary to understand potential consequences to both markets and end users? And will you commit to this analysis?
Well, I believe this is likely to be a Fed set of regulations and proposals. The Treasury is not involved in reviewing those, but I'm assuming that the Federal Reserve would, possibly jointly with the FDIC, put out a notice of proposed rulemaking, and that we would certainly have the opportunity to discuss.
You see where my concern is. The potential impact is so dramatic. If the entities that are engaged in these various elements of dramatic change aren't cross-referencing their actions, the possibility of unintended consequences, that just concerns me. Question number 2. In the European Union, the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive went into effect in January of this year. The CSRD will require companies to disclose a host of far-reaching ESG information. These requirements will also apply to non-EU companies that have a significant EU presence, which could have a substantial impact on industries here at home. For example, the agriculture sector, companies that do business in Europe are navigating through how to comply with the disclosures required to climate change, Scope 3 emissions, water usage, biodiversity, ecosystem data. Secretary Yellen, does the Treasury have an estimate of how many U.S. companies will be impacted by the CSRD and the difficulty these companies could face?
Well, I don't have such an estimate, but let me say that while we're supportive of the high-level aims of the CSDDD, we are concerned that it has extraterritorial scope and potential for unintended negative consequences for U.S. firms. This is something that we are discussing with the European Union, and will certainly make our concerns known.
I just have to note for the record that it is important that we do not allow Europe to become the standard setters for the United States. U.S. regulators should be diligent in protecting U.S. interest and in defending U.S. sovereignty. That's your job and mine, Secretary.
Agree. I think that some of the requirements could affect the global activities of U.S. firms where there is no clear nexus to the EU, and that certainly concerns us.
because Brussels seems to be playing for keeps on everything that involves economics. With that, I yield back, Mr. Chair.
The gentleman yields.